Micah Miller was the kind of person everyone in his small neighborhood knew and admired. He was the only child of loving, hardworking parents who had always taught him that kindness could change the world. "A little help can go a long way," his mother often said, and Micah took those words to heart. Despite their modest means, the Miller family was content, and Micah's parents were proud of the young man he had grown up to be. Even as a child, Micah had a reputation for being helpful. Whether it was carrying groceries for Mrs. Jenkins down the street or fixing a broken fence for the Thompsons next door, he was always eager to lend a hand. This trait followed him into adulthood. Now 23, Micah had just graduated college with honors. While his parents were overjoyed, Micah knew that the next step, finding a job, wasn't going to be easy. Micah dreamed of a career that would allow him to support his family and give back to the community. But the job market was tough, and every day brought another rejection email. It wasn't that he lacked qualifications. He had good grades, practical skills, and a positive attitude. However, competition was fierce, and Micah had no connections to help him get a foot in the door. His friends often teased him for his unwavering optimism. "You're too nice for your own good, Micah," one of them joked. "You'll spend so much time helping others that you'll forget to help yourself." Micah only smiled in response. He believed that kindness wasn't a weakness, it was his strength. One evening, after weeks of searching, Micah stumbled upon a job posting that made his heart race. Apex Construction, one of the largest and most prestigious companies in the city, was hiring for an entry-level position. Known for their innovative projects and community-driven approach, Apex was a company Micah had always admired. He immediately polished his CV, wrote a heartfelt cover letter, and submitted his application. The waiting felt endless. Micah checked his email every hour, hoping for a response. When the notification finally came, he could hardly believe his eyes. He had been invited for an interview scheduled at 9 a.m. the following Monday. The excitement in the Miller household was palpable. His parents beamed with pride as Micah shared the news. "This is it, son," his father said, clapping him on the back. "Your hard work is paying off." His mother, always the practical one, started preparing. She cleaned and pressed his only suit, a slightly worn but well-fitted gray jacket that had seen him through graduations, weddings, and other important events. Micah spent the weekend preparing diligently. He researched Apex Construction, practiced common interview questions in front of the mirror, and even rehearsed how he would introduce himself. His mother occasionally peeked into his room, offering snacks and words of encouragement. "Remember," she said, "be yourself. They'll see the good in you." When Monday morning arrived, Micah woke up before dawn. The city was just beginning to stir as he ate the light breakfast his mother had made for him. Standing in front of the mirror, he adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. "You look sharp," his father said with a grin. "Go knock their socks off." Micah smiled nervously. "I'll do my best." His mother walked him to the door and kissed his cheek. "Good luck, Micah. We're so proud of you." With his parents' encouragement fueling his resolve, Micah stepped outside. The morning air was crisp and the city seemed to hum with promise. Apex Construction's headquarters was only a 20-minute walk from their home, and Micah left early to ensure he wouldn't be late. As he approached the towering glass building that housed Apex, Micah's heart swelled with hope. This was his chance to prove himself, to change his life, and to make his parents proud. But as he neared the building, something caught his attention. At the corner of a busy intersection, just 2 buildings away from Apex's gates, an old man was struggling to carry several heavy bags. The man's clothes were worn and stained, and his frail hands trembled as he tried to drag the bags across the street. Passers-by glanced at him briefly but quickly turned away, too busy to care. Micah slowed his steps, his heart tugging at the sight. He checked his watch. 8:40 a.m. He still had time to make it to the interview if he hurried. But the old man looked like he was moments away from collapsing. An internal battle raged in Micah's mind. This interview was the most important moment of his life. If he stopped to help, he might miss his chance. But how could he ignore someone in need? It wasn't in his nature to walk away. After a moment of hesitation, Micah made his decision. "Excuse me, sir," he said, stepping toward the old man. "Do you need help?" The man looked up, his weathered face etched with exhaustion. "I don't want to trouble you, young man," he said, his voice shaking. "You'll ruin your nice suit." Micah shook his head. "Don't worry about that. Let me help you." The bags were heavier than Micah had anticipated, but he didn't complain. As they began to cross the street, Micah noticed other people who appeared to be heading to the same interview glancing at him. He called out to a few of them asking for help, but they simply shook their heads and hurried away. "Looks like it's just us," Micah said with a faint smile, trying to lighten the mood. The old man introduced himself as Rock. "You're a good kid," he said as they walked. "Not many people would stop to help an old man like me." Micah laughed softly. "It's nothing. Everyone deserves a little help now and then." Micah stood at the corner of the street, his hands gripping the handles of two large overstuffed bags. They were heavier than he had anticipated, and the old man, Rock, trailed slightly behind, dragging another bag across the uneven pavement. The morning sun glared down on them, but Micah was more concerned about the time ticking away. He glanced at his watch. It was already 8:45 a.m. "Sir, where do you need these taken?" Micah asked, trying to mask the strain in his voice. "Just a few blocks down," Rock replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "You sure you don't have somewhere important to be? You look like you're dressed for something big." Micah hesitated. His mind screamed at him to abandon the bags and run to his interview, but his heart wouldn't let him. "Don't worry about it," he said, forcing a reassuring smile. "I've got time." Rock studied him for a moment, his tired eyes narrowing as though he could see the conflict brewing inside Micah. "You're a rare one, kid," he muttered. The journey to Rock's destination wasn't easy. The bags were cumbersome and the sidewalk was crowded with morning commuters who barely noticed them. Micah's suit, his only suit, began to show signs of wear. Dust from the bags clung to the fabric, and the edge of his pant leg snagged on a loose nail sticking out of a crate they passed. Micah tried not to think about his appearance or the looming interview. Instead he focused on Rock, who shuffled along beside him. "So, where are you headed with all this stuff?" Micah asked, hoping to distract himself from the weight. Rock chuckled, a deep, gravelly sound. "Just moving a few things to a friend's place. He's letting me store them for a while." Micah nodded, though the answer raised more questions than it answered. Why was this old man carrying such heavy loads alone? Where was his family? But Micah knew better than to pry. He wasn't helping for answers, he was helping because it was the right thing to do. As they turned onto a quieter street, Rock suddenly stopped. "Let's rest for a moment," he said, motioning toward a bench beneath the shade of a tree. Micah didn't argue. His arms were burning and his shirt clung to his back. He set the bags down carefully and sat beside Rock, who pulled out a small bottle of water from one of the bags. "You remind me of someone," Rock said after taking a sip. "Who?" Micah asked, curious. "My younger self," Rock replied with a wry smile. "I used to think I could save the whole world. Thought kindness would always be rewarded. But life doesn't always work that way." Micah tilted his head. "I don't think we should be kind expecting rewards. It's just the right thing to do, you know?" Rock looked at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally he nodded. "You're a good kid, Micah. The world could use more people like you." Micah's heart sank as he glanced at his watch again. It was 9:05 a.m. He was officially late for his interview. Panic rose in his chest, but he tried to push it down. He had made his choice and there was no turning back now. "Almost there," Rock said, standing up with some effort. "Just one more block." They continued in silence, the only sound the shuffle of their footsteps and the occasional honk of distant traffic. When they finally reached their destination, a modest building with peeling paint and a broken mailbox, Rock turned to Micah with a grateful smile. "Thank you, son," he said, taking the bags from Micah's hands. "You didn't have to do this, but you did." "I won't forget it." Micah shook his head. "It's no big deal. I'm just glad I could help." Rock hesitated as though he wanted to say more. Instead he gestured toward a small table set up near the entrance. "Come sit for a minute. Let me at least offer you something to drink before you go." Micah's instincts told him to decline. He was already late, and every passing second felt like a nail in the coffin of his chances at Apex Construction. But something about Rock's expression made him pause. The man looked lonely, as though he hadn't shared a conversation in weeks. "Okay, just for a moment," Micah agreed, sitting down at the table. Rock poured him a glass of juice from a jug and began talking. He told Micah stories from his youth, about growing up in the countryside, working odd jobs and learning hard lessons about people and life. The stories were fascinating, but Micah couldn't stop the nagging feeling of urgency in the back of his mind. He checked his watch discreetly. 9:30 a.m. The interview had probably already started. Sir, I really should get going, Micah said finally, standing up. Thank you for the drink. Rock smiled knowingly. Of course. Go take care of what you need to, son. And don't let the world change you. Micah nodded, thanked him again and started walking quickly toward Apex Construction. He could feel the stares of people as he jogged through the streets, his once neat suit now wrinkled and stained. By the time he reached the towering building, it was 10:05 a.m. Micah burst through the doors, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. The reception area was nearly empty except for a few remaining candidates who were seated, chatting with each other. Their laughter died down as they noticed him. You're late, one of them said, smirking. Micah ignored them, approaching the receptionist. Excuse me, he said, his voice trembling. I'm here for the interview. The receptionist glanced at him, her expression a mix of pity and annoyance. The interviews ended half an hour ago. Micah felt his heart drop. All his preparation, all his hopes, it had all been for nothing. Head bowed, he walked out of the building, the weight of his decision to help Rock sinking in. He had missed the opportunity of a lifetime. Micah walked home slowly, his mind heavy with disappointment. Every step felt like a reminder of his failure. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the folder containing his CV, now bent and creased from being carried during his detour with Rock. When he arrived home, his parents were waiting in the living room, their faces lighting up when they saw him. How did it go? His mother asked eagerly, rushing over to him. Micah hesitated, unsure how to break the news. I missed the interview, he said quietly, lowering his head. His father's brows furrowed in concern. What happened? Micah explained everything. The old man struggling with the bags, his decision to help, and how he had arrived too late for the interview. He tried to keep his voice steady, but his emotions threatened to spill over. His mother placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, Micah. Helping that man was more important. But I missed my chance, Mom, Micah said, his voice cracking. I worked so hard for this. What if I never get another opportunity like it? His father sighed deeply, sitting down on the couch. It's tough, son. But your mother's right. You stayed true to who you are, and that matters more than anything. Sometimes life has a way of surprising you. Micah nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed it. His mother's words echoed in his mind. You should write to them and explain what happened. At first, Micah dismissed the idea. Why would Apex Construction care about his reasons for missing the interview? But as the evening wore on, he found himself sitting at the small desk in his room, drafting an email. He kept the message simple and honest, explaining how he had encountered an elderly man in need and had chosen to help, even though it meant arriving late. I understand if my actions disqualify me from consideration, he wrote. But I wanted you to know that I value kindness and integrity above all else. Micah hit send and let out a long breath. He didn't expect a response, but at least he had done everything he could. The next morning, Micah woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at the screen, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the sender. Apex Construction. Dear Mr. Miller. Thank you for reaching out. We would like to invite you to come in for a rescheduled interview. Please arrive at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Best regards. Apex Construction Recruitment Team. Micah could hardly believe his eyes. He reread the email twice, his heart racing with excitement and relief. Mom. Dad. He called out, running into the kitchen. They're giving me another chance. His parents beamed with pride, and his mother clasped her hands together. I told you, Micah. Kindness never goes unnoticed. That night, Micah prepared again, reviewing his notes and practicing his answers. He knew this was his second chance and he didn't want to waste it. The next morning, Micah arrived at Apex Construction's headquarters 30 minutes early, determined not to repeat the previous day's mistake. He sat in the waiting area, his nerves bubbling but his determination unwavering. When his name was called, Micah stood up, straightened his tie, and followed the receptionist into a large conference room. His breath caught in his throat when he saw who was sitting at the head of the table. Rock. The old man looked completely different. Gone were the tattered clothes and weathered bags. He now wore a sharp suit, his posture commanding respect. His eyes twinkled as he smiled at Micah. Welcome, Micah, Rock said, his voice steady but warm. It's good to see you again. Micah froze, his mind racing to make sense of what was happening. You're the CEO? Rock chuckled, gesturing for Micah to sit. Yes, I am. Rockford Silver, CEO of Apex Construction. I like to observe people in unconventional ways, especially when it comes to hiring. Yesterday I saw everything I needed to see. Micah's heart pounded. You mean, the bags? That was a test. In a way, yes, Rock said, leaning forward. I wanted to see how far someone would go to help a stranger in need. Many people walked by me yesterday. Some glanced at me, others ignored me completely. But you stopped even though you had everything to lose. That kind of character is rare, and it's exactly what we value here at Apex. Micah was speechless. He felt a mix of emotions, shock, gratitude, and disbelief. So, does this mean? Rock smiled broadly. The job is yours if you want it. No need for an interview. You've already proven yourself. Micah's hands trembled as he tried to process what he had just heard. This felt like a dream too good to be true. Thank you, he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. Rock stood and extended his hand. You earned it, Micah. And I have a feeling you're going to do great things here. As Micah left the building that day, the weight of his earlier disappointment lifted completely. His heart was full of gratitude, and he knew one thing for certain. His parents were right. Kindness had a way of coming back when you least expected it. The days following Micah's unexpected job offer were a whirlwind of emotions and preparation. He still couldn't believe how his chance encounter with Rock had turned his life around. His parents were excited, and Micah was determined to make them proud. On Monday morning, dressed in his now clean and neatly pressed suit, Micah stood in front of the towering Apex Construction building, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was the start of a new chapter in his life. A chance to prove himself not just as a worker but as the person Rock believed him to be. The receptionist greeted him warmly and directed him to the 15th floor, where the onboarding session was scheduled. As he stepped into the elevator, Micah couldn't help but reflect on how unbelievable everything felt. Just a few days ago he had walked into this building late, disheartened and unsure of his future. Now he was entering it as an employee of one of the most prestigious companies in the city. The 15th floor conference room was spacious and modern, with large glass windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. A small group of new hires was already seated around the table, chatting nervously. Micah took a seat near the corner, his stomach fluttering with both excitement and nerves. Before long, the door opened and Rock entered, accompanied by a team of senior executives. Rock's commanding presence immediately silenced the room. He glanced around the table, his gaze lingering briefly on Micah before he began to speak. Welcome to Apex Construction, Rock said, his voice firm yet approachable. Each of you is here because we saw something special in you. But this isn't just a job. It's an opportunity to grow, to innovate, and to make a real impact. At Apex, we value hard work, integrity, and collaboration. Those who embody these values will thrive here. As Rock spoke, Micah couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. He knew Rock's words weren't just corporate rhetoric. The man had tested his character in the most unconventional way, and Micah had passed. The onboarding session continued with presentations from various department heads, who explained the company's mission, projects, and goals. Micah listened intently, absorbing every detail. He learned that Apex Construction was involved in some of the city's most ambitious infrastructure projects, from skyscrapers to community housing developments. It was clear that the company wasn't just about profits. It was about building a better future. During the lunch break, Micah found himself sitting with two other new hires, Clara and Jordan. Clara was a bubbly architecture graduate with a passion for sustainable design, while Jordan was a quiet but sharp civil engineer who had already worked on several small projects. So Micah, Clara said, leaning forward. What's your story? How did you land this job? Micah hesitated, unsure how much to share. It's kind of a long story, he said with a small laugh. Come on, Clara pressed. We've got time. Besides, you seem different from the rest of us, not in a bad way, just different. Micah glanced around the cafeteria, then leaned in slightly. Okay, but you have to promise not to laugh. Clara and Jordan nodded eagerly. Micah recounted his encounter with Rock, leaving out no details. The heavy bags, the dusty suit, the missed interview, and the eventual revelation that Rock was the CEO. By the time he finished, Clara's eyes were wide with disbelief, and Jordan let out a low whistle. That's insane, Clara said. I can't believe you gave up your interview to help him. Most people wouldn't even think twice about walking past. I didn't know he was the CEO, Micah admitted. I just couldn't stand there and do nothing. Well, it paid off, Jordan said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Rock clearly saw something in you. The rest of the day was a blur of introductions, paperwork, and training. Micah's supervisor, Mr. Wayne, assigned him to a team working on a new high-rise development in the city center. The project was ambitious and challenging, but Micah was eager to dive in. As the day wound down, Micah found himself back in Rock's office. The space was as grand as he had imagined, with floor-to-ceiling windows and shelves lined with books and awards. Rock sat behind a large oak desk, his expression warm but serious. "Sit down, Micah," Rock said, gesturing to a chair. Micah obeyed, his hands resting nervously on his lap. "How was your first day?" Rock asked. "It was incredible," Micah said honestly. "I've learned so much already and I'm excited to get started on the project." Rock nodded, leaning back in his chair. "Good. I brought you in because I believe in your potential, Micah. But potential alone isn't enough. This industry is tough and you'll face challenges that will test your limits. When that happens, I want you to remember why you're here." Micah nodded, his chest tightening with emotion. "I won't let you down, sir." "I know you won't," Rock said with a small smile. "Now go home and rest. You've got a big day tomorrow." As Micah left the office, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Rock's words echoed in his mind, a reminder that his journey at Apex was just beginning. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, Micah was ready to face whatever challenges came his way. That night, as he sat with his parents at the dinner table, Micah shared the events of his first day. His mother beamed with pride while his father clapped him on the shoulder. "You're going to do great things, son," his father said. Micah smiled, feeling the weight of their support. "I'll do my best." And as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Micah couldn't help but think back to the moment he had first seen Rock struggling with those heavy bags. That single decision to help had changed his life forever, and he vowed to carry that lesson with him, to always choose kindness no matter the cost. Micah's second week at Apex Construction started with a surge of optimism. He was fully immersed in the high-rise development project, learning the ropes under the guidance of his supervisor, Mr. Wayne. The project was complex, involving multiple teams, strict deadlines, and a significant budget. Despite the challenges, Micah poured his heart into his work. He was determined to prove to Rock and himself that he belonged there. One day, during a team meeting, Mr. Wayne assigned Micah a critical task. It was a detailed report on the structural feasibility of a new design modification, something that would directly impact the project's timeline and budget. It was an enormous responsibility, but Micah accepted it eagerly, staying late at the office to gather data and run calculations. As he worked late into the night, Micah's desk lamp was the only source of light in the quiet office. He couldn't help but think about how far he had come, from helping an old man on the street to being part of a groundbreaking project. However, his excitement was tempered by a growing fear of failure. What if he messed up? What if his report wasn't good enough? By the end of the week, Micah submitted his report to Mr. Wayne. The next day, during a review meeting, Wayne presented the findings to the team. Micah's analysis highlights both opportunities and risks with the design modification, Wayne said, flipping through the pages. "It's thorough and well done. Great work, Micah." Hearing those words filled Micah with pride. His colleagues congratulated him, and Clara even gave him a playful thumbs up from across the room. But while the praise was encouraging, Micah knew the stakes were only going to get higher. A few days later, Rock personally invited Micah to a private meeting in his office. When Micah arrived, he noticed a blueprint spread across Rock's desk. It was for a new project, a low-income housing complex in the outskirts of the city. "Micah," Rock began, gesturing for him to sit. "I have a special assignment for you. This project is important to me. It's not just about buildings, it's about giving people hope and opportunity. I need someone I can trust to oversee the initial planning phase." Micah's eyes widened. "You want me to oversee it? But sir, I'm still new here." Rock smiled. "I know. But I've seen what you're capable of. And more importantly, I've seen your heart. This project isn't just about technical skills. It's about empathy, understanding the community, and making decisions that put people first. I think you're the right person for the job." Micah felt a mix of pride and apprehension. "I'll do my best, sir," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside him. As Micah delved into the project, he encountered an unexpected conflict. One of the subcontractors proposed a cost-cutting measure that would compromise the quality of materials. On paper, the measure would save the company a significant amount of money, but Micah knew it could jeopardize the safety and longevity of the buildings. When Micah raised his concerns during a project meeting, the subcontractor dismissed them. "You're overthinking this," the man said with a shrug. "The budget is tight and this is the only way to stay on track." Micah glanced at the others in the room. Some nodded in agreement while others avoided his gaze. He felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. That evening, Micah sat alone in the office, reviewing the subcontractor's proposal. Every fiber of his being told him it was the wrong choice, but he also knew that pushing back could create tension with the team and delay the project. Unable to shake his unease, Micah decided to seek advice from Rock. The CEO listened intently as Micah explained the situation, his face unreadable. "Micah," Rock said finally, "what do you think is the right thing to do?" "I think we should reject the proposal," Micah said firmly. "It might save money in the short term, but it could hurt the people who will live in those buildings. They deserve a safe, quality home." Rock leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "Then you've already made your decision. Trust your instincts, Micah. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's what sets great leaders apart." The next day, Micah presented his case to the project team, outlining the long-term risks of the subcontractor's proposal and suggesting alternative cost-saving measures that wouldn't compromise quality. His passion and conviction won over the room, and the subcontractor's proposal was rejected. When Rock heard about the outcome, he called Micah into his office once again. "You did well, Micah," he said. "You stood your ground even when it wasn't easy. That's the kind of leadership we need here at Apex." Micah's journey at Apex Construction continued, each day bringing new challenges and opportunities for growth. Over time, he earned the respect of his colleagues and became a trusted member of the team. But through it all, Micah never forgot the lesson that had brought him there in the first place: the importance of kindness, integrity, and staying true to one's values. As he stood on the construction site of the nearly completed housing complex, watching the buildings take shape, Micah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew that his actions had made a difference, not just for the company but for the people who would soon call those buildings home.